Alina of the Arena is an indie roguelike deck builder, self-describing as combining Slay the Spire with Into the Breach, which in reality means we have a physical battle map, classes, meta progression, card upgrades, deck building, and a number of other deck building style mechanics. Alina of the Arena was a community suggestion, fairly well received on Steam, and a deck builder with what looked like an interesting twist, the battle map, and for me that was enough to at least take an initial pass at it and see what it was like. For me, deck builders are notoriously difficult to evaluate without playing them, which was another point in favor of checking it out. Oftentimes, a good deck builder and a bad deck builder look really similar on Steam reviews and really similar on gameplay reviews, and it isn't until you really dive into the game a bit that you get any sense of the differentiation. My prediction prior to playing was a B. Most deck builders end up fairly similar, often differing only a little bit, and often only in substance and difficulty rather than any unique gameplay mechanics. But after playing for an hour, I upped my rating to an A. The battle map seemed significantly transformative, and that left me pretty excited coming into this game. I liked the battle map and weapons. They were far more transformative than I expected. They really defined the game for me. Positioning is often absent from card games, or mostly absent from card games, and having the actual battle map really opened up new strategies for me. It made distance a relevant calculation in how to engage with enemies, what enemies needed to be engaged with when, what weapon systems I wanted, and that also then informed the card selection of what was important to the deck, and all of that interacted with the characters and itemization. I thought that was great. The battle map also made multiple opponents much more interesting. Often in card games, you run the problem of you only have so many cards, you only have so many resources, there can only be so many opponents before you are powerfully overwhelmed. There's some ways around this, obviously AoEs are one of them, but by and large, you're pretty restrictive in the types of fights you can have in deck building games because of this, and the battle map really changed all of that for me. I thought it was an excellent feature. I also liked that it included all of the kind of generic things we look for in deck builders. These are things like meta progression, multiple characters, different starting decks, a path that you choose, so you make some decisions about what order of things you wish to approach in, shops, card upgrades, relics, items, all of this was in there, a currency system. The whole thing was pretty well done by and large for that genre. And then I liked that it was $14.99. Is in full release already, so it's a fairly cheap game as games go. It's in full release, and it has a demo available for people wanting to test it out. All these things were excellent, in my opinion. What I didn't like the difficulty curve. I thought it started off too easy and had too many spikes in the sense of bosses were significantly harder than anything else, including elites. Elites didn't seem much harder to me than the initial trash mobs, and most bosses were fairly easy except for some bosses which were very difficult. The difficulty curve was a little bit all over the place for me. I would have liked a little bit smoother progression of gameplay for that. Although, to be fair, I do need to point out that you do start with some difficulty decisions and you unlock more difficulties as you progress up. So there was at least some progression that way. I also dislike some of the UI interactions. By and large, the UI is pretty clean for telling me what's going on, but occasionally I would get to a point where the information provided to me wasn't enough to understand the interaction of what my card and the opponent's intents were going to be, which results in random outcomes. And random outcomes are clearly not what we want in the card genre. The whole point is to make informed decisions about what's going on and try to choose the best decisions there. And when you don't know the outcome of what you're doing, that can be very, very frustrating. Now, it's a complicated UI in the sense that you're dealing with physical interactions with cards and intents displayed. So it did a fairly good job by and large for most of what it did there, but it did fail in some situations for me. I didn't like that the pathing for this game, for the decision making about which encounters you take when, was based around a system that allows you to do all of every path each time. So unlike other games where you're making decisions between A or B, in Alina the decision was really which order you wanted to do them, and you didn't have to do all of them if you didn't want to, but mostly I felt obligated to do all of them because when I was on a high power level, taking easy fights and farming them for gold was positive for my overall power for boss fights later, but felt like work in the meantime of having to take these trash fights that I don't really care, didn't really challenge my deck in any way. I also found that the trash encounters weren't particularly exciting. Although there is a fair diversity of enemies, they didn't feel significantly different and large by and large for a lot of the trash mobs. That changed a little bit with elites and definitely changed with bosses, but for trash mobs, they were fairly repetitive. Weapons were less interesting than I hoped. The battle map and weapons were an interesting transformative game system, but they tended to behaviorally lock me into certain weapons. In other words, when you get shop upgrades for weapons, it improves that weapon but not other weapons. And when you pick cards, you often are picking cards that are more synergetic with your weapons. If you have ranged weapons, you might pick cards that play well with those. If you have melee weapons, you might pick cards that play with those. If you're running a shield versus a two-handed weapon, you're going to pick cards that synergize that. That's great. We like the synergies of that. But what it often meant that happened was I would find the first weapon upgrade I found that was somewhat compatible with my deck and was better quality than my starting weapon or the initial weapons would be the weapon I had for the entire rest of the run, because I started investing upgrades in it and choosing cards that synergize with it, so I couldn't get away from it again. So it ended up being, weapons might have increased the total number of possible builds you might have when you replay this game endlessly, but it seemed to reduce the total number of builds that I might have in any run where I'm given that weapon, which was kind of unpleasant for me by and large. And although the battle map was transformative, the rest of the game really wasn't. So I don't know if this is a criticism so much of it is of the game, so much of it is a criticism of the genre as a whole, which is I often find the deck building genre to be fairly stale. And when I see innovation in it, I really like that innovation to be game defining. And the battle map was great, but the rest of the things in that game weren't so different or transformative as to be interesting. They were just systems I was very familiar with from 1,000 other deck building games. After playing the game for another 7 hours after the first trial hour, I revised my score and moved it down to a B. Although the game is fun and understandable and seems to use many of the features that you find in all of the recent deck building kind of games and added its own in terms of the battle map, it still wasn't quite enough to make this game set this game apart from the rest of the genre, and it wasn't quite enough to draw me back into it. I think this is a totally respectable pickup for anyone who particularly likes the card game genre, but for me, it just didn't do enough to pull me back in after that initial play session.